All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for episode 4 of our series of Candidates and Conversations leading up to the 2020 general election on November 3rd. Tonight's event is honored to be hosted by the UC Merced Community Engagement Center and the Office of Government and Community Relations. My name is Jesse Espinoza, and as a fourth-year student majoring in political science, I'm excited to be moderating the discussion this evening. During the series, as we sit behind our computer screens, hearing from the candidates that hope to build our community's future, it's clear that we are in unprecedented times. Due to the pandemic, we can't gather to engage in healthy debate and discussion like we normally would. So we felt it was important to find a way for members of our community here at UC Merced, including students, faculty, and staff, to engage with the candidates that are running to represent them. But this virtual format also makes it easier for the UC Merced community to invite our friends and neighbors to join us in this discussion from the comfort of their own home and without having to deal with campus parking. So welcome to all. And please be sure to let your local family, friends, and neighbors know that they're welcome to join us for the upcoming sessions if they miss this one. Additionally, please be sure to remember to register to vote or make sure you're already registered by visiting registertovote.ca.gov. Again, that's registertovote.ca.gov. Before we get started, we'd like to pause and acknowledge all local indigenous peoples, including the Yokuts and the Miwok, who inhabited this land, and thank them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and collaborate on their traditional homeland. Let us now take a moment of gratitude to pay respect to their elders and to all Yokuts and Miwok people, past and present. Thank you. Now, let's go over a few housekeeping items. All participants are muted upon entry. We encourage you to use the speaker view instead of gallery view. We will start with some pre-selected questions for the candidate. Participants can type questions into the chat at any time, and we will get to as many as we can during our allotted segment. If you would like to ask your question live, please use the raise hand function or let us know in the chat and we will unmute you to do so. Again, we will get to as many as we can during our allotted time. Reminder that this is meant to be a conversation and an opportunity to get to know the candidates. So please keep it respectful and on topic. So without further ado, let's get started. Tonight, we have the opportunity to hear from Matthew Serratto, a candidate for Merced City Mayor. Mr. Serratto, thank you for joining us. Let's get started with the basics. First question, please tell us about your background and why you decided to run for mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Great to be here. I've been on the council since 2016. I ran in 2016, was elected then, and I've loved it. I love the people. I love the work. I love, the chance to, really make a difference and make the community better is just a unique honor and opportunity and something I'm extremely passionate about. And so just my time on the council, being there, working on these issues, I think we've accomplished a lot in the last few years and really moved the city forward in a lot of ways and done a pretty solid job. But there's a lot of unfinished business, and that's a big motivation for me is just kind of taking what we've done and moving that on to the next level and really moving this, continuing to build a positive Merced. And I relish the opportunity. I love the people, love the work, and just extremely passionate about it. So that's the biggest reason. So I've really enjoyed my time over the last few years.
Shoot, well, thank you for your answer. That's awesome. I appreciate your passion for Merced. For second question, kind of brief, we want to get to know you in general. What are your top 3 issues that you hope to address as mayor if elected?
Probably the big 3 that we hear about over and over again, I'll give you 2 answers if that's okay. The big 3 are homelessness, number 1. Economic development is always a big issue. What, businesses are coming in, job growth, those sort of things. Economic development is huge. And then, public safety and policing issues. Those are probably generally the top 3 ticket issues in Merced. You probably hear a lot about them. So I kind of, would kind of focus on maybe some different issues if that's okay. I was thinking, things that are kind of maybe a little more unique to me, which I think are big issues in town. Downtown redevelopment, kind of reimagining, rebuilding downtown Merced, building community, bringing people together, moving the community forward. And then also a neighborhood revitalization program, which I'm pretty passionate about as well. With downtown, the UC played a big part in it. The UC downtown center opened up a few years back, and that was in a lot of ways the first big step towards the revitalization. Now we've seen, with a lot of big, the Tioga, the Mainzer, the El Cap, all that, really a lot of new businesses coming in. And we haven't obviously gotten the full benefit of it yet, but we're getting there. And then, I was on the downtown subcommittee for a couple of years for our council. So we really spent a lot of time studying the issue, looking at other downtowns, visiting other valley downtowns, especially the more successful ones. Turlock, Lodi in particular has a phenomenal downtown. Visalia has a great downtown. Fresno and Modesto have done really big things lately to revitalize their downtowns as well. So really learning from them, coming back, really getting down our hands dirty at the grassroots level as well. In our downtown, talking to all the business owners, talking to the property owners, and really kind of getting a good feel for it. And, I think we've kind of hit that first step. To really simplify it big time, you need three things, right? First, you need some sort of game-changing business, some sort of private investment to come in. Turlock, for example, in 2007, 8, 9, they had close to a 40% vacancy rate in their downtown. And getting Dust Bowl, simple as that. Just a bar restaurant downtown was a huge catalyst turning point for them, an attraction type business. So I think we've reached that and we hit that. And the two big other things that we need that I think we've seen in a lot of their downtowns is one, the city has to put skin in the game. The city has to invest. The city has to invest in good plazas, public spaces, more parking, cleaner streets, beautifying the downtown. So, that's, I think, a big next step for us. It's pretty soon. It's going to be our turn to do that. And then third, you need a really strong downtown association that can really run the thing. It's a combination of both private citizens, business owners, community advocates, and the city as well. So it's kind of a consortium of a lot of different groups, which we saw in city after city is necessary, really necessary to really advocate for a strong downtown. And I think with those three things, within 3 or 4 years, Merced has one of the best downtowns in the whole Central Valley. I firmly believe that. We've gone from being, an area where downtown was a weakness of the city to within a few years, I think we could easily have one of the best downtowns. And having a great downtown, that's the start. That really makes the city so much more attractive for people to live, invest, work. So it's really the foundational for having a great city. That's one. Building community, it's something I'm passionate about, bringing people together. Merced, a huge advantage to Merced to me is it's in that sweet spot kind of. It's a town that's big enough where there's enough amenities. We're not quite there yet. We need to grow a little more, especially get into that 100 to 120,000 people range. But it's still small enough where people and you have a sense of community, and you can go to the store and run into somebody. And I love that. That's what I love about Merced, and just being rooted in that place. And I think those social connections and those bonds in a lot of ways determine human happiness. Just having those social connections, knowing people. So I think that's something we can really develop as a city. We did, and I was a part of our Loughborough revitalization project, and as through that we threw a big block party, and a lot of us kind of studied it and saw that other cities were doing the same thing, and some cities have 20 or 30,000 people a year that come out to their block parties, where it's a great thing. It's the city kind of taking it to the neighborhoods, and so that's something we brought forth, and something that I'm passionate as well about moving forward in the future. That's just one idea, but there's a lot of ways of just getting out, getting people to know each other, having more things to do. It answers a lot of questions. And then third, again, I think a lot of our neighborhoods are older. And our older neighborhoods are suffering from they age, right? When neighborhoods age, just simple facts like the roots grow and crack the sidewalks, or the streets start to fall apart, just simple things like that. So targeted neighborhood revitalization program focusing on the neediest areas first. And again, this is the behind what we did to a big extent in Loughborough, which we still need to do, because COVID kind of put a lot of things on hold, because you have to social distance and you can't have events and meet people like you did. But just targeting those neighborhoods, meeting people, talking to people, that's what we did over there, and just kind of finding out what the needs are in the community. We hear a lot of things that are the same, but there's going to be a lot of things that are unique to each neighborhood. And so kind of taking that model, which we did, which was infrastructure, public works focused, but then also the soft issues as well. Neighborhood cleanup day, public safety issues where we try to develop better relationships between the police and the community, youth programs, youth outreach, workforce development as well, and then access to government and government services. So that was, I studied personally a number of other cities and things they've done, and, in their own sort of targeted neighborhood improvement programs, and sort of try to put the best of all that together. And that was the result. Was a 3-month or so kind of targeted public works investment. And those things are big, and like in Loughborough, for example, there's there's disproportionate number of people who are elderly, who could be so they're using the sidewalks. Simple. They have walkers or they have wheelchairs, and then disproportionate number of kids as well, and the kids use the sidewalks. So something we found just talking to people over and over there was the sidewalks and the condition of the sidewalks were a really, really big deal because they were used. And so that was something we haven't got there yet, but it's on the list, and now we've moved that project up and it's become a priority. So that among a lot of other things was just a nice thing to learn doing it. And that's what you do when you engage and you do outreach and you talk to people. Just a simple kind of real basic example, but at the same time, I think something we need to do. And we take that to a lot of the older neighborhoods in town, a couple of South Merced neighborhoods, the downtown neighborhood as well. Because those are the older neighborhoods in town that are around 100 or so years. So we need to fix those up.
Shoot. Well, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you for that perspective. And, I can't agree. I think Merced's kind of in that sweet zone where everyone, you can run into someone at the grocery store. And that's something that, I really appreciate have growing up in Merced, and that you kind of feel like your neighbors and you have that sense of community. So thank you. I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah.
The next question. So a walk down Merced Main Street in the year 2020 will show you a revitalization boom. Historic theaters have gone new facelifts, new bars, restaurants, and business have opened. Pre-COVID, Merced experienced the highest personal income growth of any metro area in the country for the past 5 years. This Central Valley city was beginning to look like a place of prosperity. However, still at least 1 in every 3 babies and toddlers in our city lived in poverty pre-COVID, and that number has likely only been exacerbated. Merced's surely a city on the rise, but some citizens are getting left on the ground. What are some steps you'd like to take to get us back on track and make sure prosperity is shared evenly amongst Mercedians?
Yeah, to your point, Merced, obviously COVID hit everybody hard, and the COVID downturn hit everybody hard. Our unemployment rate was about 7 or 8%, kind of near historic lows before, and then it jumped up almost to 20%. We're back down. I think the last number was 11.3, which actually I believe, and I don't quote me on this because I'm not sure if it's 100% right, but I was told that for the first time in 40 years, the Merced unemployment rate right now is lower than the California unemployment rate. So that's kind of an interesting fact I heard. But at the same time, still 11.3%. We need to bring it down more. We need more jobs. So that's one, just job growth. And it's certainly, we got to keep that unemployment rate down, invest, attract business. A lot of different ways to do that. I think it's an economic development plan. I think, again, the availability of industrial land for businesses to invest in. I think we need to build up a better kind of a tech economy in Merced. I think we're seeing the beginnings of that, and the UC is a huge part of it, and kind of bringing that together. And there's a lot of factors that'll mix that together. I really like Merced as the gateway to Yosemite. It's our slogan. I think we can do a much better job of living up to it. And if we do, and just pull in just a tiny little more fraction of those 4 to 5 million people who go to Yosemite every year, drawing them through Merced. You think about it, just 1-2% of that is 40, 50, 100,000 people coming through Merced, staying in Merced, staying in downtown. So I think Merced being that more competitive, better job creator, job retainer is a big step right there, right? Jobs, number one. To the point I made earlier, investing in the older neighborhoods, not leaving them behind. I think you see in a lot of cities, and in a lot of ways, it's kind of the bad side of the story of American growth over the last 50, 60 years is, the older neighborhoods being abandoned and people moving out, sprawl, right? Everybody moves to the suburbs and leaves the older neighborhoods behind. And then I think you've seen that reverse itself to a big extent in the last 20 or 25 years in the U.S. with cities being revitalized one after another. So I think we have to continue to invest in our older neighborhoods. and the second side of that is just it's growing smart. We have to advocate um, filling vacant buildings over people sprawling out. I think insisting and being aggressive on education, opportunity, access, and again, that's the city, with workforce development. City doesn't do workforce development. Generally, we have a couple of small programs, but that's the county job. But I think the city can do a better job of really partnering with the county, partnering with labor unions, partnering with other groups to bring, a better workforce development program to our people. Just a simple example of that is the city is most likely, this is a huge, huge win for the city, to get a maintenance facility for the H train. The H trains, the southern terminus is supposed to be in Merced, and it seems like they're planning to put a maintenance facility in Merced and take up a huge part of our Western industrial park, and potentially 500 to 1,000 jobs. Those are good, solid paying jobs, and we need our people to get those jobs. And so they need to be trained in how to maintain and operate, repair these trains. So I think having the education and the access, so our people from Merced can get those jobs that are coming here. You see a ton of construction jobs with the UC, with other places, and unfortunately, too many of those jobs go to people from out of the area. And we need to do a better job of bringing those back. And then finally, I think on that topic, just affordability. Right now, our housing market is a little out of whack. Our housing market has done a complete backflip over the last decade. We've gone from being ground zero of the foreclosure crisis to now having probably a 3-week inventory of homes. There's such a tiny supply of homes on the market. And COVID has kind of exacerbated that. But I think, with us just continuing to build up in the core, a denser central city, I think would be pretty cool. And we're seeing the beginnings of that with Tioga and the downtown residential it offers. But then, we need to continue to build, and we're doing it. But we're not doing it fast enough. We need more housing, and it's simple market supply and demand to a big extent. And I think there's a lot of housing affordability is a big concern all of a sudden. A lot of people are challenged with that, and I think we need to do better. And I think simple fact is a balanced market has 6 months of supply of housing. We have less than a month. So we need to increase inventory, and I think we're doing it, and we need to continue to do so.
All right, thank you for that. So to bounce off of that, UC Merced's 2019 and 2020 enrollment sat at just under 10,000 students. This growing student base has caused a surge in the number of residents within our county. The California Department of Finance reported that the county is the fastest growing in the state, showing that more than 4,000 people moved into Merced County last year. This has led to Merced's notoriously low vacancy rate of 1% that you just kind of mentioned. However, in the last 4 years, Merced has built 0 housing units for low and very low income households, while having built more than 1,300 units for above moderate income households. As mayor of Merced, would you promote the development of affordable housing units? And if you would, how do you ensure that homes built don't just remove affordable housing from those with lower incomes?
Yeah, we've been doing it. The city has 2 significant affordable housing projects right now. There's the Child's Court Apartments, which is at Child's and B, 120 unit, or 119, I believe, unit complex with 30 of them set aside for what's called permanent supportive housing. And there's Gateway Terrace 2, which is at Child's and 13th, which is 50 units with 10 units set aside for homeless veterans. So there's it's almost 200 units, 2 pretty significant projects, a total of probably a $50 million overall investment. So they're big ticket, expensive projects. And we've been working on them for years on the council. There's a lot of different steps to take. There's a ton of moving parts. And so we've been working on it. So it's absolutely, yes, I think we need to. I think we need to do more. It's just attracting the funding and getting the projects done. Unfortunately, these projects they take time. Everybody who sees buildings being built, they don't happen overnight. And there's just been a lot of, just a lot to do over the last few years on those. But if you, for anybody who pays attention to council meetings, you've seen repeatedly over and over again the topic of affordable housing come up, and you've seen repeatedly over and over again those 2 projects being mentioned, discussed, and supported fully by the council. But I think you make a point, that we need to do better. I think to an extent too, and it's a California problem, is affordability is an enormous California problem, much less so in Merced. Merced is one of the most affordable places in the state. but still it's an issue. But building affordable housing is expensive. It takes a lot of effort. There are a lot of hoops to jump through, and uh, it's just frankly, and I quote a number. I think LA did a project where it cost them $700,000 a unit. So it requires a significant government investment, and whenever you do that, these projects don't, always happen one after another. I think the city has a total of maybe over the years of the projects that are built, I think 19 total affordable housing projects are in the city. With you got to figure in those, I'm guessing, but easily 1,000 units, in the city based on that. And there's all kinds of other, housing supports as well, Section 8, other housing vouchers, other ways to sort of support the housing market that are, done not just at the city level, but state, federal, county level as well. So there's a whole system of affordable housing, that all kind of fits together. But yeah, I know I'm rambling at this point, but to your answer, yes, yeah, we need to do it. We've been doing it. It just takes a while.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. So as you might know, the UC community is geographically separated a bit of distance away from the core of Merced. One common concern is that the disconnect, it seems to influence between the UC Merced community and the Merced community. For example, the UC Merced campus is not actually located within the limits of the city, which means students, for example, living on campus, while they're at UC Merced, they can't actually vote in Merced City Council or Merced Mayor elections for the candidates. So among this issue and others that arise from it, what solutions do you think might help kind of bridge this disconnect?
Yeah, no, that's a lot. It's an ongoing concern. I think distance is fundamental to your point. And it's simple as that. Um, excuse me. It's physically bringing people together, right? And how are we going to do that? We got to do that with, either the way people live, where they live, housing as well. It seems that, Yosemite Avenue in particular, with some of the new development and the recent development that our council approved, is really going to shape up to be a major significant student housing corridor in the near to medium term. So it's kind of creating a mix of places. I think, again, going back to downtown, a better, vibrant downtown, which really can be an attraction for the university, and having the UC downtown center there as well, maybe bringing more events there, can help bring students downtown more. The UC's done it. Another big thing as well, UCs have a history of doing this. I mean, I spent 7 years of my life on UC campuses. Both my parents went to UC, and my brother and sister. So, we spent some time. And UCs have a history of building kind of way out in the middle of nowhere. When they built UCLA, everybody was telling them, "Why are you building UCLA way out in the middle of nowhere?" Because that's where it was at the time. And then, gradually over the years, the city will grow to the UC. UCs kind of just frankly have a history of doing it. Irvine, UCLA, on and on. So that was sort of the thought when UC Merced was built, that Merced would do the same and grow to it. But we're deep into our North Merced annexation study. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that on the council. The conclusion was it will take 30 years for us to grow. If we're going to grow in an orderly fashion, which is kind of typically what's required, the California law discourages sprawl and says you have to grow, incrementally out to the UC in this case, and you can only annex, what's contiguous to the city. We're talking 30 plus years. And I mean, to us, that wasn't acceptable. I think to a lot of other people, that wasn't acceptable. And so actually, Assemblyman Gray brought a bill, AB 3312, I think it was, which is going to allow for some sort of reverse annexation, which will allow the city to annex a road strip. So now this is another tool that we have. The governor signed it. So we can annex a road strip and the UC campus and then grow back from the UC campus into the city. So to a lot of the concerns you raised, being able to vote in the city elections, participating in that way, that would change it, obviously, if the city were able to annex the UC. And that's was kind of the original thought. There's just been a lot of, obstacles in getting there. The city provides services to the UC, water, sewer, those sort of things. So, obviously not something people think about all the time, but something that the city has to maintain and invest a lot of money in as well. So we could see a lot of action sometime soon with that annexation and the UC kind of coming into the city, and then that could spur growth around the UC. But I think the big things are just, they're breaking down those barriers. They're slowly breaking down. You see, a lot of, you, for example, other people I've known who run from the UC running for office, in Merced, getting positions in Merced. And there's gradually going to be more and more, but it's happening too slowly. And I think it's just a lot, and there's that disconnect. You're right. So those are just some thoughts on how to help fix it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that perspective on that. I know it's an issue that's kind of near and dear to all UC Merced students and the whole UC community, and a lot of people in Merced. So I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, I think.
What kind of projects would you like to see happen on our city council to improve our infrastructure in our city? And you can take that with our roads, our parks, our bike and trail system.
Yeah, just a few, and we could talk for a while about this. The two huge big ticket items that are, long term and, determine their state projects and determined on state funding are the ACE train and the high speed rail meeting in Merced, and Merced sort of becoming a northern transit hub, or the northern terminus of high speed rail, the southern terminus of ACE. Those are enormous, and both of those coming to our downtown, meeting in our downtown in the area of the Transpo Center right now, which, could, regardless of what your opinion is of both those projects as statewide investments, it really has a ton of potential for Merced. Connectivity with the rest of the valley, connectivity with the rest of California, just bringing people into our town, into our downtown. And then again, it's huge link when it comes to the Yosemite travel as well. So those are the big ticket infrastructure items. We recently got some money from the CARES Act to help refurbish our airport. Our airport is on the verge of, with a couple, maybe 1,000 or more or so enplanements, people getting on and off the plane every year. We're able to attract more federal funding, and to have that as a means to also attract, potentially Yosemite travel or as an economic development thing. I think we can make improvements there. Highway 59 on the west side of town between 16th Street and Yosemite is at the border of my city council district. Has some of the worst traffic in town. We recently approved, in partnership with the county and NCAG, a $10 million project to help widen that road, to make it 4 lanes, really alleviate a lot of the traffic. To me, that's probably the worst traffic in town, between all of 59 or all of 16th along that road. And then to widen the bridge over Black Rascal Creek, which I think would be a big thing, because that bridge is too narrow, it's dangerous. So that's a major infrastructure improvement that I'm excited for, that we've already done. With bikes, the city's got a good bike path system, really does, a good network all across town. We need to maintain it, improve it, smooth out the trails. We complaints about the path not being smooth enough in certain spots. We need to do better about that. And then long term with bikes as well, bikes in the center of the city, bikes in downtown. That's where we need a little better bike network. And I think especially with long term, with the trains coming in and with the kind of the multimodal transportation where people can get off the train, ride their bike to work, ride their bike to housing, transit. That's a pretty cool vision of the city, I think, where you have that kind of denser, more vibrant core. And, bikes in the downtown will be a big part of it. So just a few ideas. There's a lot more to, but I think those are the kind of the top ticket things in my view.
Shoot, thank you. I appreciate that. We got a question in the chat. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining in. He asks, good evening, Mr. Serratto. Thank you for joining us in this incredible candidate session. My question is related to the efforts of sustainability and renewable energy. If you're elected mayor, will your constituents put their trust in you to redefine Merced's direction in revitalizing its infrastructure and investing in renewable energy?
Yeah, I think, most often for, the city and you see the county did it, the high school district did it, it's a big battery of solar panels over a parking lot. Unfortunately, the city, unlike, you see a big project right in the county admin building at M Street, you see it at the high school on Olive as well. They recently invested in big sets of solar panels that, classic renewable energy in order to do that. The city, it's difficult for the city because the city doesn't have a parking lot like that. And the city needs, the parking lots that the city does have, there's not a great long-term plan as to how to do it. So, if the money makes sense, I looked into this personally years back as well. Solar, I talked to a number of people, big solar investments for the city, using that as a way, to get our power from solar panels instead of currently where we get a bulk of our power from either PG&E or mostly MID. And just at the time, it wasn't cost effective, believe it or not. I have solar on my house, and I got into my house. I didn't have solar, just by way of analogy. Put solar panels on my roof. Now I get clean renewable energy, and my bill went down. But for the city, at this point, everything we've looked at, the bill would go up somewhat significantly. And so at the time, we don't want to put that burden on the taxpayers. But I think there are creative ways that we can do better. We got to find, like the county and the school district did. The simple thing is just to find a good parking lot where you put up solar panels, people park under them, and they get shade, they get the benefit of that, and then the city gets the benefit of clean power. So I think that's something we'll constantly look into, and that's something I'll continue to look into as well. I was having a conversation with somebody just yesterday, talking about, some sort of, I forget the term he used, but for some sort of electric vehicle charging station, either at Campus Parkway or something like that. The idea of sort of a lounge or a cafe, being more of a private investment. So it'd be interesting to see how the city could help look into that, promote that as well. With charging times obviously being an issue for longer vehicle trips with electric vehicles. You're getting a 4 or 5 hour road trip, you're gonna have to stop, and it's gonna take half an hour plus to charge your vehicle. So possibly, especially with the city being so centrally located in California, this and the new Campus Parkway and the highway retail at that point, being a good spot for that. I was talking actually to a businessman yesterday who, was mentioning that, and, that could be a great idea. So open to a lot. Those are just two ideas. So.
Well, as someone who's been in one of those high school lots in Merced heat of the summer, I would say that we need those renewable energy lots, at least for the shade. We need them at least for the shade, cool us off. So thank you. I appreciate that perspective. So
yeah, we can do it. There are lots. So those lots are good because there's no trees, right? No trees, they get direct sunlight. And they gotta be big enough. So the city's got to find that. And the point is, like, our parking lot at 18th and right across from City Hall, there's, talk about maybe doing something different with that, changing that. So we don't want to make a short-term investment. We need to make a long-term investment that benefits the taxpayers, and not do something and have to change that for a few years, which would be a big waste of everybody's money.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So last month, the current Merced City Council the last Merced City Council voted against a Black Lives Matter mural that would have been placed in downtown Merced. In the end, it was a 5-2 vote against the installment of the mural. Having been a member of the council, what was your vote on the mural, and why? Why would you? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I ended up being one of the no votes. We thought about it for a long time, put a lot of thought into it, talked to people on both sides. The proponents, I'm good friends with most of the proponents. I spent a long time talking to them as well, hearing their perspective. And I think, at the end of the day, there's a couple issues that I think resonated with me and then resonated with the majority of the council. One was the appearance that we were supporting an organization. The city cannot support an entity or organization. I feel pretty strongly about that. I think we can't, whatever the organization is, it just doesn't matter. And even though we weren't, because Black Lives Matter is two things, right? It's the statement and the assertion, which no one can dispute that, but at the same time, it's also an organization. So to a lot of people, it was ambiguous, and to a lot of people, it gave the impression that we were supporting a specific organization, which was problematic because, in city government, as in the law, when I work in the court, the appearance of something is essentially the same as actually doing it. Your intent doesn't matter so much; it's more, what the appearance is. So I think to a lot of people, it could be easily interpreted as us supporting an organization, which we can't do. I think that's a hard line for me. We can't advocate no matter what the organization is. Secondly, and we all kind of saw this, we saw 4 or 5 moves ahead. We started talking to people and hearing things, that were said. And if we're going to allow the Black Lives Matter mural, then we're going to get proposals for a number of other murals as well. And where do you draw the line? As the city, I think, we There's First Amendment government speech rules where the government can say, the government can speak. And when the government speaks, the government can say, for the most part, what it wants. But again, I feel strongly that we have to be somewhat neutral. We can't obviously advocate for any group that's hateful or intolerant or something like that. But we have to be somewhat neutral. And it's good policy for the city to have. We're going to allow one group to do something, and then we're going to have to allow somebody else to do something. Then if we don't do that, there's going to be all sorts of complaints about unfairness. So we saw 4 or 5 moves down the road where this was going to go, where there's going to be other groups advocating for it, some very well meaning and sincere, others not so much, that would try to sort of take advantage of the situation. And this played out in many other cities as well. You saw it to an extent in Martinez, where they recently are removing a mural. Redwood City as well did that. So there was precedent for it as well. And so that was another thing, is just kind of turning this into a big issue where we had to deal with one mural and another mural and another mural, and just that taking up a lot of energy, and that possibly dividing our city. And that kind of brings to the other point, is that at the end of the day, the reality is that this is very controversial. That I think, again, the statement Black Lives Matter is irrefutable. You can't deny that in any way whatsoever. And the fact that, for many years in this country, Black lives haven't mattered as much as other lives. And, the country has work to do still in terms of, being a country where there's better racial justice, better racial equality. But we saw, a lot of people have reasonable objections with the movement and their perception that there's flaws with the organization. We heard strong arguments on both sides for it, and for and against. And in my view, at least, when you have strong ideas on both sides and the city's got to either pick a winner or a loser, that's kind of a bad play for the city, right? So when that's the situation, let's come up with something different. Let's come up with something better. That was kind of what we tried to do. But at the end of the day, proponents wanted that. I don't blame them for a second, for wanting that. But the city tried to work and try to get something maybe a little different, and that didn't work. But now we're kind of going down that road again, and a lot of people are doing a lot of good work, from the city, with the NAACP, with the other organizations that help oppose it, and the conversation's still going on for sure, I can tell you. And there's a lot of alternatives that are being proposed. And at the end of the day, the most important goal is to unite our community and to unite our Merced around our African American community. We have a very impressive African American community in Merced, a lot of good people, and we need to unite customer Merced behind them and get them to support, in solidarity. And the simple reality is this would have done the opposite. And just the blunt truth is that it would have backfired, and it would have done the exact opposite and turned a lot of people against us. So, I think in the interest of uniting our city, in the interest of race in our city, I think we did the right thing at the end of the day. It's not the kind of decision that tastes good. It's not the kind of decision that, you relish making, but at the same time, I think we did the right thing. And I think the important thing is bringing our city together, uniting our city, and, bringing people behind all segments in our community, most notably and importantly, in this instance, our African American community, and showing support. And, that's kind of, agree with me or not, that was my logic. And
yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that, Mr. Serratto. I know it's a controversial topic, so I really appreciate you sharing that on that.
Yeah.
So,
well, one more little point too is, as compared to big cities, Merced's different, right? Merced's different because there's a lot of different factors, but there's personal relationships here. We all know each other. Every person, all the people who proposes, I know them. I'm friends with them, and there's a different dynamic where, there's interpersonal relationships as opposed to in bigger places where people are more anonymous to each other. So I think, one of Merced's strengths throughout, all the unrest that's gone through 2020 is those relationships. and the fact that we know each other and the fact that we have a lot of mutual respect for each other. It's a story that doesn't get told much, but throughout this year, there's many people, many conversations I've had, many conversations other people in the city have had, where we can just pick up the phone and call somebody and try to do our best to work this stuff out and do our best to communicate to each other that we are in support of each other and that we respect people as human beings, and the city's not going to stand for so much of what's afflicted the rest of the country, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that perspective. So, according to a group of homeless service providers and advocates, the Merced County Continuum of Care, there were over 600 homeless individuals living within Merced County in 2019. This is an increase of 93 from the year prior. So understanding that this is a huge issue with a lot of organizations putting effort into this, in your view, what is your role as mayor and part of city council in addressing that issue for Merced?
Yeah, homelessness is our number one issue. As a councilman, as mayor, I'm actually on the board of the Continuum of Care as well. And then working for the DA's office as well, we see a lot of issues as well. So I kind of get it on three different ways. The numbers were up, right? The 2019, you get the 2019 count as opposed to the 2018 count. Countywide, 514 total to 600 and something. The unsheltered count remained the same, and that's the key. That remained at about 300. The additional 90, it was a little misleading because the additional 90 were people who were all in shelters, mostly in hotels, staying on hotel vouchers. And a lot of them, if we would have counted the way we counted the year before, would have been counted. So the 18+% increase that the paper reported was somewhat misleading because one, they were all in hotels, not on the street, and then two, they could have been counted the year before, but they weren't. So that's one. But again, homelessness is the top ticket issue. You could spend I'll try to summarize my position as best in a minute. Is it's very complicated because you're dealing with so many different organizations. The city has a certain role, the county's got a role, the state, the federal government, nonprofits, on and on. It just deals with the intersection of so many different groups. So leadership and coordination is incredibly important. It takes community-wide, county-wide relationships and coordination. So that's number one. We've done a better job in the last few years of doing that. We have to continue to do so, to continue building that network. And then in my view, I think we need a place where people can camp. There needs to be some sort of approved encampments, because right now people are camping all over the city. They're staying all over the city, and to a big extent, we just chase them around in circles. We have people who are in a certain area, and then they're there for a while. We start to receive a lot of complaints from neighborhoods and citizens about them. Public health hazards start to come forward with trash that's left behind, trash that's going in the creek, excrement, those sort of things. They become health hazards, right? And so at a certain point, the city has to come in and clean them up. And it just ties up an enormous amount of both public works and police resources to do it. So we kind of, and the story of the last couple of years is 6, 7, 8 different places I can just name off the top of my head where people were, and we moved them. So long story short, we need certain places where people can be. We need better temporary housing, which we're in the process of doing. There's a county directed navigation center, 75 beds built with repurposed shipping containers, which is hopefully will be done around January 1st. So a big project over the last few years was getting that plan built. The D Street shelter went from 50 to 60 beds, maybe a little more now. So they increased their bed count, and they went to 24/7. So you need those places where people can be on the street. You need the temporary housing, and then you need the permanent housing as well. We've increased our supply of that gradually over the years as well. And then you need a network of service providers, mental health counselors, drug outreach counselors, meeting people at those different levels, getting the people who are in the encampments, getting them into the shelter, because it's a step-by-step process. You have a population which oftentimes is what's called service resistant, and it takes 15, 20, 25 contacts to get people to start trusting you and to get them help. So it just takes a lot of work, a lot of investment, and it's using those people, getting the mental health clinicians, getting the alcohol counselors, drug counselors, getting them, to the people at the different levels and moving them from the encampment into the temporary housing, then temporary housing into more permanent placements. The rescue mission, for example, is building a new 100+ bed drug treatment center and off Cone Avenue. That's going to be a great project as well. Get people into that. I've seen firsthand some of the incredible work they can do in terms of getting people off of drug addiction and back to being wonderful, hardworking, productive adults. I've seen it many, many, many times. So I'm excited for the future. I think for the first time, within about a year, maybe, don't quote me on that, but coming forward, we'll have the tools we need. And then it's just, we got to implement. And it's just having a good organization, a well-oiled machine that really is actively, that doesn't tolerate drug use in parks, needles sitting around in parks. We have to manage our public spaces a lot. And then just mitigate so many of the negative side effects of homelessness, the crime. And every night, I see it firsthand. I was over at a business the other day, and guy showed me a video of a lady who came to his gas station in the middle of the night and was lighting a fire underneath his propane tank. And if there was a leak in that propane tank, there would have been an explosion, and just on and on. Time after time of our businesses, in a sense, are under siege, and it's just not right. Our businesses, every night they, and again, I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. Every night, somebody who owns a small business, somebody who owns a business in the downtown, or a lot of other business people in Merced, they come to work and their thought is, "What happened last night?" I've heard it 100 times. What happened last night? What got destroyed last night? And so we need to do a better job of getting people out of those areas, allowing those small businesses to better thrive. And I think we'll do it. We're gonna make it. No one's ever gonna end homelessness. We're not gonna end it, but I think we can manage it better. And I think we can certainly reduce the number of people on the street.
Jesse, we have a few questions, and I know that we're coming on to the end. So why don't we have Priya? You raised your hand. Why don't you go ahead and turn on your microphone and ask your question?
Thank you, Andrea. Hi, Matt. Nice to see you here. You're still at work, so I want to know if you read all those books that are the papers in the map. Really quickly, so there's been a lot of chatter about youth activities not have anything for youth. So we keep referring to the sports complex, which is only for soccer.
Yep.
I also wonder academically, I think Merced students are falling behind, and that's my personal opinion. The school district may not agree, but that's my personal opinion. And so I wonder, and I know there's a lot of student groups in the city who are offering at the school districts who are offering tutoring. I know this kid who created his own webpage, and he says, "I'm willing to offer free tutoring," but they're not getting much traction. And I wonder when whether it's an athlete or an artist or an academic student who wants to do something, can they come to the city hall, the city council meetings and talk about what they're doing? How are you engaging the youth in this community? Not just in sports, but how are you inviting them? And what would your ideas be to invite these students, the young people, whether it's Merced College, UC Merced, MCSD, MUHSD? What would your ideas be and how to invite them instead of always having them come to you? How would you?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of things we've done over the last few years. In terms of depends on which age you're talking about, but I'll try to be quick too. I know we're running.
High school, yeah, high school. Let's talk about high school.
For example, the state of the city, bringing in all the high school kids to that. Mayor Murphy's done a good job of really trying to make that an event focused on youth. Our Summer at City Hall program, for example, which is to bring youth into City Hall, have a program there and kind of show them what we do every day. We just opened up a new youth center at 27th and K, which is our third. Well, if there's the McNamara and Stephen Leonard Youth Centers, the MAC, the Boys and Girls Club at the McCombs Youth Center, and then now this. So the city just opened a new youth center, awarded the Restorative Justice League with a deal to operate it as an after-school program. So it's expanding programs like that. This is a simple thing, which I think is cheap and so therefore workable, doesn't require a lot of investment, is just doing a better job of bringing the kids into what the city does every day. For example, I went to the wastewater treatment plant with a friend who was, making some comments about things we could do out there at the city council meetings. Took him out there, and just simple tour of the wastewater treatment plant. You can teach a year of science out there, with science and engineering, with everything that goes on. So, you have, our fire department taking kids there. Kids always just, especially the younger kids, they love that. Science classes, take them to the wastewater treatment plant. I just organized or helped organize a little tour. It was all virtual because of COVID, but a friend of mine, her daughter is really interested in water and wells and wanted to know how the wells worked. So tours of those, and they really had an enjoyable experience learning about that. So that's just another idea of, bringing people in for an education in that regard, because there's just a lot of science, a lot of government, a lot of civics that you can do. The city does. There's a marketing problem as well. I mean, the city alone offers. I'll just read the short list: yoga in the park, movies in the park, the summer playground program, swim, dance, hunting safety classes, a bunch of events at the zoo. The zoo is a great attraction. We need to bring more people into the zoo. On and on.
I would say you have a marketing problem. Yeah.
There's a marketing problem. That's a big thing. We've been trying to work on it. We need to do a better job. And COVID obviously kind of kills everything because you can't be around people anymore all of a sudden. But, we passed that, and hopefully soon enough. Cooking classes, karate classes. There's a lot the city does.
I really had no idea. Wow.
You're taking better advantage of the things we have right now. And then once we do that, then it grows, because right now it's almost like we do things and not enough people show up. But I think, simple, bringing people out to the treatment plant, to the wells, to the zoo. That's just one idea. A lot more we can do as well. Oh, and for little kids too, the block party is a phenomenal idea, because when we did our block party in Loughborough, so many kids came out, just tons and tons of kids came out. Put a couple of bounce houses out there and some other things, and all the kids come out. Really a great way to engage the young kids in their neighborhoods. That's kind of there's so many. I know I keep talking, and it sounds silly, the block party trailer, but it just has so many different positive components to it. And one of those was kind of taking the city and activities to these neighborhoods, taking it to you, which was just so. There's a lot of good that can come from it.
Thank you, Matt.
Welcome.
Shoot, thank you, Priya, as always, for asking engaging questions. And Serratto, thank you for your perspective. Before we end tonight's conversation, I'd like to give the candidate a minute or so for any closing remarks. So, Mr. Serratto, what would you like our audience members to really remember about you tonight?
Well, hopefully I didn't say anything too silly or too dumb, but no, I got, the big thing is I got a lot of love for the city, and I love this work, and I'm engaged in, a lot of things that we've done, and I really just want to bring people together, move the city forward. And I think, I think I'm open-minded, willing to listen, and there's a lot of good ideas, and I just really want to elevate the city and its people in so many ways. And that's, our fellow council members, bringing them up, making them better. I think that's what good leadership does. You engage your other council members, see what they're passionate about, bring their work forward as well, and just kind of, in a lot of ways, maintain a lot of the positive things we've done over the last few years. Obviously 2020 has been a big blip for everybody, but then get back on track and really take the city to the next level. And I think we can do that. So I'm excited for that opportunity, and I think in so many ways it's the opportunity of a lifetime. And we got 2 events coming up if anybody's interested, 2 campaign events. We've again, kind of in a lot of ways proud of my campaign. We've everybody had to adjust because of COVID, but we've kind of focused in a lot of ways on helping the community. We've done a half dozen business sponsorships, helping a lot of the businesses and giving exposure to them through the tough times. We've done 2 really big scale community, one a community barbecue, the other one a community pancake breakfast. We've provided thousands of free meals to the community through that as well. And then on October 3rd, Saturday, 8 a.m., which is extremely early for me, we're going to do a Loughborough cleanup day. So we're going to meet at 8 o'clock in the morning at the corner of Loughborough Meadows. If anybody's interested, should have a good crowd there. We're going to break up into teams and do a lot in order to help pick up trash. We're going to have a big roll-off dumpster that we can load up. We're going to have trucks that we can carry big bulky items to the U70 and 59 bulky item drop-off site. And I'm thinking, we'll see, but if just kind of depending on the way things go, hopefully we can scale this up in the future. And the first Saturday of every month, which is a Saturday where the bulky item drop-off site is open, having something like this, a little targeted community cleanup day, 6 council districts, 12 months in the year, do the math, 2 for each district, and just kind of have a cleanup day, because we're hearing there's a lot of complaints. The city's done a lot over the last couple of years to address policy issues, to address trash and blight, but there's still a lot more to be done. And I think that could be one of them. So I'd like to see if that works in order to maybe combine that again with a block party and have once a month, first Saturday every month, we have a cleanup day followed by a block party. I think that could really be a nice benefit of the community. And then on October 11th, we're going to do a fundraiser for one of your UC Merced police officers, Chris Cowings, who's suffering with, he's got blood cancer, multiple myeloma, and so he's been out of work. His income's been hit pretty hard because of it. So on the 11th, we're going to do a drive-through steak and potato fundraiser for Chris to try to raise money for him and his family. So those are our last 2 big events, if anybody's interested.
Shoot, well, thank you for that, Mr. Serratto. Your energy and your engagement for Merced is clear. I appreciate you participating and letting us get to know you a little bit better. For all our participants in the chat, please make sure that you're registered to vote by going to registertovote.ca.gov. Again, that's registertovote.ca.gov. Join us again for our upcoming candidates conversations. Our next one is this Tuesday, October 6th, with Lee Lohr, candidate for District 2 of Merced County Board of Supervisors. And visit events.ucmerced.edu for our future dates and candidates. Thank you all again. If you have any more questions, you can stay in the chat, and Mr. Serratto might have a few more minutes for you. And thank you all again. We'll see you all next time. Thank you again, Mr. Serratto, for joining us.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you. Good luck.